And you can activate the graphs editor by clicking on this icon here. And this is the only icon that doesn't really open up a new panel, but instead you will get a new floating window. And here you can see the graph editor. The graph editor has two, or actually three, main areas. This is the areas where you see the graphs. Then you can select the single trackers, or you can also look at the graph from the camera. And then you have the timeline here, and you have some icons that can change either the way your graphs will look like or will help you to deal with these graphs. Now, this view isn't really much helpful for us currently. Instead, we want to switch from this tracker bar-like mode to the actual curves and graph mode. Currently you're not seeing anything, but as soon as you select one of these trackers, you will see a curve here. And if you hit Command A, and you can do that also here in the graph editor, you will select all of these trackers and see all tracker graphs all at once. Now what you see here is, and let me quickly zoom in here by selecting the zoom tool and then draw a rectangle over this curve, and also maybe just select tracker 1. So what you see here is a red and a green curve. This is not the exact placement of the tracker, it's more the velocity of that tracker as it moves on the screen in U and V directions, or horizontal and vertical velocity. And by hitting Command A and selecting all the trackers, you can see that most of these trackers are pretty much doing the same movement. So they have the same velocity in both directions. But then you have these bad spikes here. And if you want to select these spikes, you can activate the Isolate Curve tool. And by clicking on that, you can now select these spiky curves by clicking on them. And now I want to switch to a different view, because now this floating window is blocking my view. So let me just quickly close that. And here we pick the dual end graph display. And here you have the top view, your camera view, and down here you have your graph editor. So again, let's zoom in here and then also zoom in on this tracker. Now there's a neat little trick if you want to stay focused on this point, and that is to just press 5. When you do that, this tracker will stay in the center of your screen and the rest will be moving around. So that way you can really stay focused on this particular tracker. Now you can see here's a spike, there's a spike, and it's jumping around. So we know that this is a very problematic tracker and we should get rid of that. Now to do that, just hit the backspace button to delete that, and now the tracker is gone. By clicking on this button you can zoom out and see everything, and now hit Command A to select all of the trackers and then continue to finding these spiky trackers. If you select your Isolate Curve tool again, we can click on this spike over here, zoom in, press 5, and then see what's happening. You can here see the spike in that trail too. And with your S and D keys we can go back and forth. So that's a very problematic tracker, so we can just delete that. Hit Command A. With your middle mouse button you can you can pan around here in this graph editor, and these are all pretty much okay. They're doing more or less the same movement. This could be a problematic one, so let's select it. And then here in your timeline, see what's happening. And this is the same problem that we had in your first track when we saw one object hiding another one, and that will lead to errors like this, where the tracker is suddenly starting to follow that other object. So let's delete that, hit Command A, and then continue to look for spikes. Here's one, and now I think we can just, without looking at that, just delete it. Command A, continue. Here's one, same problem. You can see here one object hiding another one. So just delete that. And then just go on finding these problematic trackers. Now, there are some trackers that seem to be doing something different than the other ones, because they are separate from these. But if we zoom out here and really select just one of them, you can see the movement is pretty much okay. But the difference between these trackers and this one that we had selected is just because this is really on the edge of your frame, and also it is very much in the foreground. So of course it is doing something quite different than the other ones, because it's so near in the foreground, and that way the movement will be different. So these are okay. This could be a problem here. So let's just zoom in. But when you look at this, it's not a problem. There's no spike. So the difference between these curves is the same reason that made the difference of the other trackers that have been on that column here in the foreground. So I would say we should have pretty much cleaned up all the problematic trackers, although maybe this one. Let's have a closer look. Okay, now it's really hard to tell if there's an error or not, because I cannot see anything. But, well, it could be that there's a problem. Okay, let's just keep this. I don't know if this is really that much of a problem. Here also. But if you look at the difference between this edge of that object and the edge of the tracker, there seems to be quite a spike. So let's just delete that. Alright, if you want to zoom out again, you can just right click on the zoom tool, and that will reset your view. So I would say this looks pretty much alright, and we can now leave this dual and graphs modus and get back to quad view and reset our view, because I think now we should be fine, and in the next step we can start solving.